Welcome to the Savage Worlds GM podcast. I'm your host, Jared Savage Daddy Gunning. This episode, not brought to you by Roll20.net. Tonight's episode. Sorry, I'm a little off kilter with our special guest. Tonight's episode features special guest Clint Black of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. Here to discuss SWADE, the new Savage Worlds Adventure Edition, currently on Kickstarter. If you're a fan of the show, you can follow us on social media at SWGM Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. Stop by the YouTube channel, watch the live stream, as well as collections of the live streams there. It's youtube.com Savage Worlds GM Podcast, and on iTunes, Savage Worlds GM Podcast. If you like what we do, want to get behind the show, throw us a buck on Patreon, patreon.com/SWGM Podcast. And finally, last but not least, we are accepting and looking at chat from the live show tonight to bring into conversation. So if you have questions about the new Adventure Edition, the new edition of Savage Worlds, by all means, join in. We will bring that into the show. Here to discuss it, Chris, the Savage Mommy Fox.
Hello.
Dave, the Rules Maven Scott.
Greetings and salutations.
Dustin, the Savage Zealot Smith.
It is as the prophecy foretold.
And Scott, disavowed Savage Cheerleader.
Well, I don't think we're ready for this.
And, drum roll please, Clint Black of Savage Worlds. Welcome, Clint.
Hi, everybody. You should get your secretary to get a better drum roll.
Yeah, we're a low budget production.
I'm pretty happy.
So I know that some of the Pegs released some of a preview of the chase rules more than anything else. I know there's certain things that we can't talk about because it hasn't fully released yet. So under the veil of that, we'll try to be conscious of not having any slip ups tonight. We're talking about that, but you want to give a brief overview, Clint, about why Savage Worlds Adventure Edition, why a new edition, and why it isn't called Black?
Black was always the working name. I mean, and it was just based off of the Black Edition. We were like, and that was to us going to mean the Ultimate Edition. But then we were like, well, not really Ultimate, because we realized in 15 years we've learned and learned and learned, and we've grown. And so we were like, well, Ultimate doesn't fit. We'll go with Black. That works. And then, when we had to refer to it, we started saying, well, working title, Savage Worlds Black. And then we kept having to use that because we never came up with whatever else we were going to use for other name because we were too busy working on it. And so we ended up, switching over and, I'm not kidding here. I think it literally about a month before we actually started the Kickstarter, we finalized the name. So it was kind of, might have been a little bit more than that, but it was down to the wire on what we were going to go with. But yeah, as far as why the new version of the rules, 15 years, man. You learn a lot. I mean, and, I think part of it comes down to, and, this may be entering on thin ice a bit, the change to the recovery from shaken mechanic. Because when we did that, we realized we had blind spots where it came to the system. A lot of stuff had happened about how you play the game that was kind of more word of mouth and more playing with other people and more feel. And it wasn't necessarily about the mechanics so much. And so we wanted to get back to how the game was intended to work and be written that way, as opposed to how it worked if you played it a certain way. And when we realized the shaken mechanic recovery was one thing that was off. That started to trigger in of, well, what else have we gotten used to? Have we just gotten used to that could be better? And what else is out there that could be improved? And once we kind of started down that trail, we were like, you know what? It's been, well, at that point, it was like 13 years in, and it was like, let's start it, because it's going to be a process to really go through and be willing to look at it with fresh eyes. Be willing to ask the questions of, Are we doing this because we got used to it, or are we doing it because it's a good rule?
Fair enough. Good,
Yeah.
good though.
Yep.
I think one of the things that we said at the very beginning was the reason why we're calling it the Black Edition is because it's just going to be like the post answering all the questions.
There was a lot of conversation that the Black Edition was going to be nothing more than all of Clint's answers from the forums all rolled up in a big errata that you're going to beat people over the head with until he started playing the game correctly, despite the fact that that was never a focus of any of the way you answered questions. But it did seem interesting that the errata list got longer and longer every year because there were so many places where the rules were written a certain way and people would ask the question and everybody's like, just play it and you'll figure it out. Because it really was, at least there for a while, in kind of a state where until you actually sat at the table and saw the game in action, you didn't understand the way some of the rules were written. I think you had to see them in action.
Yeah. And that actually was a big part of doing a rewrite and quote unquote a new edition of the rules. Not so many rules have changed. I mean, we're showing some of the stuff that has, obviously, but those are underlying mechanics. They really aren't going to affect like playing a particular setting or stuff like that. Well, it's going to be how you actually use the game. But the other thing was, how is it presented? I mean, how can we present it in such a way that, yes, playing it is always the best way to learn any game, but how do we present it better that people understand as they're reading it, like a better comprehension of how it plays and how it runs and stuff like that. And just how to use the rules. I mean, simple things like reorganizing how character creation is. So it's a little bit more clear that, when you have your hindrances, you'll have those points when you get your attributes and your skills, as opposed to getting them at the end and having to retroactively maybe change stuff,
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have, I've done it that way for the longest time after the first couple of years of running the game. When I sat down with new people, I would say, okay, this is what the book says. This is the way I want you to do it. I want you to come up with those hindrances first, because that's going to give you those points, and it's going to help you come up with the rest of your character. So I love that change. I thought just that little tweak is really going to make it more streamlined for people trying to create new characters.
Yeah. I love having hindrances first, because to me, hindrances are the foundation of any character. Because really, what really tells us more about your character and what they're doing isn't what they can do, it's what they can't. It's where their weaknesses are. That's where your real thing is. That's what, as a hero, you're overcoming. And I think that's your foundation almost more than anything. But that's opinion.
So, Dustin, we have a question from Alec Muzzy. You want to go ahead and knock that out of the park?
Certainly. Alex Muzzy, question for Clint. Every version of Savage Worlds has new chase rules. Did you ever consider replacing them with dramatic task rules?
Nope. Okay, next question. Actually, and I think we talked about it a little bit beforehand. The quick encounter rules are out now. We've previewed those, I believe, today. And I think if, Alec, if you go out and you find those, you'll find that one of the options under quick encounters is actually to run chases with them. So it's actually, there's more than one option for chases than just the quote unquote chase mechanics. And yeah, as we stand now, this version of Savage Worlds looks like it's going to have 2 chase rules to it before we're done, but it's only going to be 1 in the final version.
Well, I think interestingly enough, and it's something we've talked about here on the show quite a bit, is enough of the mechanics that make up those kind of the big toolbox pieces, like the dramatic task, the social conflict, now the quick encounters, and the chase rules are, to a certain extent, they're almost interchangeable, because that mechanic can be used for other things than a literal chase or a literal dramatic task. You can use those in a lot of different ways, because they each give you a different feel to how something is accomplished. and they all are a very interestingly written mechanic. There's not a lot of overlap between them in the way they mechanically work, but they all can narratively be trapped to the same thing.
Yeah. It does. It depends on what your goal is with the scene. You know, a chase scene could be, you know, merely a stopgap till you get this person, and it's just this cut scene of what's going to happen. And quick encounter would work for that. Or a chasing could be something where, okay, this is going to be more intricate, where this person could get away or not, and that's going to determine which way we go with this campaign even, or the storyline. And so you might go in with, the actual chase rules, because it's going to be more more focused. The chase has more importance, as opposed to, we could do quick encounters, handle it quickly. We know you're going to get the guy. The question is, what's it going to cost you? Yeah.
So you had talked about this a little bit in the green room because of one of our backer questions, and I thought it kind of bared repeating here during the show as well, is the kind of the, and it just flew out of my head because I had a cat run between my legs.
What's that a euphemism for, Dave?
You senility, Dave, on to one of the other panelists.
Chicken.
Well, we'll go to another. Ruben has a question, so we'll throw it to Dustin again here.
Okay, we'll give David a chance to figure out what pre-cat.
Focus, Dave. Focus.
Okay.
Ruben Riviera. Here's a question. Was there ever a mechanic or rule you considered initially, in the end, was deemed either too complicated or just extra fluff and not included in SWADE?
A single one? No, there wasn't a single one. There were multiple ones. So this is something I tell folks, and again, it's like, sometimes, people will say, I'll pick up the book to look up a rule or something, and people will be like, you wrote the rule, didn't you? And I would have to explain, I wrote 7 versions of that rule. I'm not sure which one ended up in the book. There's a lot of stuff that we do that we go in, and it's got to go through, design. And that process alone is, primarily Shane and I going back and forth, especially with the core rules of what we're going to do. And, even in ourselves, we realize things are too complicated. And one interesting aspect about this, though, is we don't shy from too complicated, because all too often we've learned that leads to the simple, better answer. Mm-hmm. Because it helps you focus down to, okay, what are really the important parts here of what do we want to keep out of this? And maybe this was complicated, but this aspect of it was really fun. And fun is also important. That's worth a little extra complication if we have that. So, there's a lot of stuff, that was in there that, or has been, like, as we went through, that we considered, different ways. But in general, the final goal was always, simplify, or I don't necessarily want to say simplify, but make it a little bit more, intuitive.
Well, yeah. It's so I recently last year threw my hat into the amateur game designer. We got things through a Kickstarter and published it. So yeah, I kind of get where you're coming from. For people who don't really design games, they don't really understand how many times you have to cycle through something and really use up those batteries before you really ask the question, like, what the hell are we trying to accomplish? And can we do it with like a single dice roll, right? Instead of these complicated, drawn out taskers. And I think that's where a lot of people get bogged down. And, I had this interaction, and I know Jared has a question for you specifically, but, it's I don't believe in this liturgical dogma adherence to what the rule book says. I'm not a rules as written person at all. And, that's the best interaction I've ever had with you, is people ask you a question and it's like, well, here's what the rules say. And everyone takes that as dogma. And there is no other way. So saith the Clint Black. and they run with it, right? Instead of having these imaginations that gamers are supposed to have, and like, God damn it, just use the dramatic task rules for the chase rules. If you don't like the chase rules, stop getting on the videos or forums and asking how come we can do chases better, right? And there's just weird adherence to what is written. So shall it be written, so shall it be done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I really, when I answer questions on the forums and I talk to anybody on the forums or in person or anything like that, I always say, this is what the book says. How you ran it, like, especially if it's a case of, well, this was the decision I made. Was it right? And I'm like, well, first off, was it fun? In which case it's right. It's like, this is what the book says in case it comes up in the interesting and you want to go that route. But if the other rule was fun, then that's right. I mean, the rule that's right is the rule that works at your table. Yeah. Period. End of story every time. That's it. And that's the most important thing. I mean, it might be that this is how the rule works here. But, the most important thing that anybody can do is make sure you understand how those rules in the book work and how some of them kind of interact, because some of that stuff is subtle. We're trying to make it a little bit more clear, and things like that, hopefully. But and provide other opportunities to see it in use, like the current Twitch stream of ETU Undeclared that the guys at Saving Throw Show are. That was one of the things that we worked on with the actual concept of seeing it played is going to help understand it better than just reading the book, and so to have that 3-episode arc that people will always be able to go back to as an introduction to SWADE, I think that'll be invaluable. But yeah, I mean, even then, I mean, if you've watched Wildcards, the regular Deadlands show that Justin runs, they've got their own rules to it. He's got his own house rules. And I've talked to him about some of these things, and he's absolutely right. The rules that he runs are, fit his game exactly the way he runs it, and that's what they should do. It's not the book. The book doesn't run the game. The game master does. And with the players.
Well, and I think that one of the places where I have to admit it was you specifically who broke me on that was, I want to say about 7 years ago now, I was doing my first foray into like a fan license product, and I was trying to recreate the A-Team. And I had built this complex draw card mechanic to see what insanity popped up for the day to recapture Murdoch, where one day he wants trash bags, and the next day he thinks he's a World War II flying ace. The following day he's an aide to Napoleon, and B.A. Baracus is considered Napoleon. He was so all over the place, and I was recreating it, and you went, why not just make that habit minor? He gets -1 charisma because he's so hard to deal with, and then the player just role plays beat insane. And I went, yeah, why not? Why do I need this complex series of bells and whistles to get there? And it was the first time that I made that cognitive leap to step away from what the book says to do for something and look at other ways to either not necessarily retrap something, but just repurpose stuff.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, you're talking about a classic thing of you're creating rules for how the player should play the character. Give them the habit, let them come up with something. And if they come up with a brilliant thing of, I think I'm an aide to Napoleon, and, BA is actually Napoleon, the tallest guy in the group is, Napoleon, then Benny, that's brilliant. I love that. Play that, that's your hook. And that's, when you have to roll to persuade or do whatever, that's going to affect your stuff. But I love that. But yeah, let the player play the character and make those things up. And, if they falter, that happens sometimes. But if they're having fun, then it's right, and help them out some with those, those kind of suggestions. I mean, that's what a GM's there for, to help the players, not run the characters for them,
I think that's one of the greatest things about Savage Worlds. What really draws me into the system is the fact that it has that sort of flexible framework that it can be really loose at times and have what you need at other times. It doesn't micromanage.
Yeah.
Well, we've made this example before on the podcast, using a social conflict in a post-apocalyptic world as a barter at a market. Like, well, I know you're supposed to use persuasion. Can I use intimidation to try to threaten the guy to lower the price? Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. I think the social conflict rule, just for example, is flexible enough that it can be used for anything that deals with two people trying to get what they want out of a certain situation. And the thing I like about the design of it, the way that you guys have written it, is it's not a binary result. It's still open to interpretation about what that victory and margin of victory means.
Right. Yeah. And even in that margin of victory, you have some freedom to come up with something that's going to work in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it may be that it makes sense based off the argument the players make. That was a good argument, that they completely convinced someone for what they, of their meaning, but they only got a partial success. And maybe in that bartering situation, you notice the person that you're bartering with gives you a look like they really want to give you the price you want, but keeps looking over, and you notice that there's somebody over there that looks like they're with organized crime that's watching their booth. It's like, that's a whole nother hook to run with, But yeah, I mean, I obviously, like I said, I like it too. I like our rules.
So I'm going to throw this one in here real quick. Unless Dave has recovered from the cat between the legs, and
I have it written down so that I won't forget it again.
Go ahead, jump in.
So what you had been asked in the green room was in regards to the quick encounters and kind of the story behind how that came out, and we had talked a bit about how that kind of lends itself to kind of the GM's all-purpose tool for the quick answer moments, but I always found it the story behind that, where Shane was apparently running a 3-hour session on top of a 30-minute window of time in Italy, and suddenly someone came up to him and went, "Well, you've used 3 slots for your 1-slot game," and that's where quick combats and then later quick encounters was born out of. That to me is just, it's such an interesting idea that we took something that to me was always very much something a GM was supposed to do. Present here's a situation, now give me 1 dice roll and we'll move right past it with some narration around it, and kind of finalized it into an actual mechanic to kind of guide people to how to run moments like that. So I guess my question is, where did the inspiration come from to take what is essentially kind of good GM 101 of letting your players kind of run with a narrative and distilling it down to a 1 quick dice roll? Where did that come from? Because it absolutely meets the Fast Furious Fun model.
Yeah, it came from Devil Pigs. The game, the specific scenario Shane runs, and I've played it before, is called Devil Pigs of Cochise County. And that is the origin of quick combat. It's the case of, in the storyline, there's a situation where he kind of wants to have this running battle, basically where you're being harried by a foe, as you're going through the night and stuff like that. But he didn't want that to be a full combat every time, and so that led to quick combat as a way to resolve that. And once he had done that, he basically came back and said, this is what I did. It worked really well, but I think with a little bit of, polishing, we can put this in as something, and essentially we can skip the part at the table where the GM is like, all right, how many dice are you going to do? Because you failed, but you didn't critically fail, but everybody else did pretty well, whatever, things like that. It's like, basically 1 page is all it takes. Say 1 dice roll, give them the information, give them an idea of where that roll is going to be with critical failure, success, raise, The original version even went like 2 raises with glory, heaping glory upon yourself, whatever. And I guess it's just a thought that there's no reason not to put those rules out there. And it's like, okay, this is simple. This is what a GM could come up with. Like, let's do one roll. Let's do that. But sometimes you have to put something in writing for people to make that leap to, hey, yeah, that is an option. And I didn't realize that in some of these things where I wanted there to be a combat, but I didn't necessarily want it to be something that, was going to kill a player or necessarily, take up a bunch of time in the game, because it wasn't going to be, that one combat wasn't going to be key. It's a saloon brawl, and I mean, those are fun. Yeah. But let's make it fast. And ultimately that led to, when we started working on SWADE, the concept of, well, that idea goes beyond combats. There's almost any encounter can be a situation where, hey, let's find out what it's going to cost the player something to do it, but they're going to succeed, and I mean, the classic example is an investigation. If there's one piece of information that the entire mystery hinges on, and that's the way it, works. It's like, sure, there shouldn't be if the players have to go look for it. But if there is, then a quick encounter is the best way to handle it, because the players will get that information. They will succeed in a quick encounter. But what's it going to cost them? Does it mean when they go to the final battle, they're going in fatigued or wounded or, or down or something like that? Or, some other effect that happened? I mean, everybody fails. You might still get the information, but, you are, you've lost a lot of time, and by the time you get to where they're performing the ritual and the rite, they're almost done, as opposed to you might have caught them earlier, Right. So, yeah. And so it really is just a thing of, hey, this would be useful. Let's do it. Hey, this would be useful in a lot of ways. Well, let's do that too.
Well, and CL Taylor points out that it makes a great alternative for starting a game as in media res, because that was always one of those things that we talked about here on the show was, if you start your game with a combat, anytime combat happens in Savage Worlds, exploding dice are a thing, and someone can literally catch a case of the dead on the first dice roll of the night. That's not fun. So this gives you that option to get that moment without having to put them at mortal risk.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gives you a little bit of that opportunity and that scene. I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of movies that have stuff in there. A classic example of like a quick encounter might be Tombstone. If you take the first scene with Wyatt Earp, where he goes in and he goes into the saloon, and the guy says, that's the guy that runs my faro table over there, and it's Billy Bob Thornton's character, and he just walks up, and intimidates him. I mean, the slapping him isn't damage or anything like that. That's just, how he's doing his intimidation, to do it. And, ultimately, you look at that like, okay, this could be a full-bore social conflict, but this is just a scene to show, basically Wyatt is intimidating, That's what he is. He has this presence about him, and he knows how to read people. You can see that in there, too, he knows this guy isn't going to shoot you unless it's in the back. He's a classic bully coward. He's already read him. He knows him, and you get an idea of who Wyatt is in that moment, but you don't necessarily get a situation where Wyatt walks back out and gets shot in the back with a shotgun.
I love the line when they actually do have the confrontation where Billy Bob Thornton's character, and it's kind of funny that they're both gamblers because it's a gamble. It's like he pulls the gun and he sticks it to his forehead. He says, "You're first. No matter who's next, you're first. And they can't do a thing to stop me."
Best. That's actually Ike Clanton. That's another thing that could be the quick encounter. That's the showdown in the streets at night, and basically those quick encounters too. I mean, when Curly Bill shoots the sheriff, when he puts the gun in his head, those quick encounters. In those instances, it's not a case of are you succeeding or not. It's using this encounter to build the threat of the cowboys. To let the players know just how dangerous these guys are. They actually liked Fred, the sheriff, got drunk and shot him. It's like, and didn't really care that they had shot him afterwards. Yeah.
So I have a quick question. Just from an overall design philosophy, the elimination of charisma. What was the thinking behind that? How does it work better in the new Savage Worlds Adventure Edition, with charisma being out of the picture completely?
Really, it was holding us back. I mean, charisma was like a wall that kind of existed in between edges and skills. Here's all these things that affect charisma, as opposed to we could just take this hindrance or this edge and say specifically, this bonus affects this, in this way. It's like attractive adds to persuasion with someone that would find your character attractive, not necessarily, gonna do something else, that charisma might affect. And, other, things here and there that makes it a little bit easier of, charisma seems to be the way you interact with somebody socially. Well, most of you guys know, I mean, intimidation and taunt now, we've expanded out their descriptions to show their non-combat uses. So it's a lot easier to say this edge gives you a bonus in a social situation, but it's not charisma. It's a bonus to intimidation. It's a bonus to taunt. And it's like, well, why are we doing that with skills that affect intimidation and taunt, which are also social skills, but we have a special thing that we create this secondary stat that's affecting all the other stuff? It's like, why can't we say, ugly as a hindrance is going to affect persuasion? Yeah, if the person can see you, it's like, it's like, it was an unnecessary kind of middle step, to what was going on. I mean, if you want to say, hey, what about that stat that kind of let me know how people would react to somebody? Individuals react to somebody differently. I mean, you take a very attractive person, and this came up a little bit also in the green room discussion. You may have people that are so intimidated by their beauty that they don't talk to them, or they can't react well because they're nervous around them. Or you could have the flip side of someone who's so jealous of that attractiveness, it's actually going to be a penalty or a drawback, By taking charisma out of the mix and just saying, this is the edge, this is what it does, this is what it affects, we're skipping the middleman, so to speak. We're going directly edge to skill, hindrance to skill, edge to effect, the charismatic edge itself, being able to adjust that to not just be a bonus to charisma, but actually have a different effect, which, spoiler alert, I don't think we've mentioned that yet, but hey, charismatic has a different effect. Congratulations, you've learned something. Now you know.
So that still makes it very, very easy for you to create the face character, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, wait a minute, if you get rid of charisma, I'll never be able to create the face character without charisma.
Oh, it's so much easier to make the face character now. I mean, and you can make different kinds of faces, the smart mouth, the smart aleck, or, I mean, like you were talking about before, hey, can I use intimidation in the social conflict? Well, now it's right in there. Yeah, sure you can. Absolutely. By the way, understand that afterwards, this person is going to have a worse reaction to you because you chose to go that route, right. But you're going to, this moment, yeah, it can work, and, there's different options in there for that. We also, there's some other adjustments and skills. think most of you guys are aware of and how things work, but that are going to make that not just easier, but easier to, I would say, specialize in what your character is. In other words, you don't necessarily have to be an attractive person to be good at getting information on the streets.
I was going to say, one of the things I noticed that it accomplished, without getting too close to revealing anything, is that now when I build the face character, I'm building specific abilities. I'm not building some I win modifier where once I've hit a certain tipping point, I've got the biggest modifier I can get and I'm never going to fail a roll. I'm not just building up that +6 or +8 so that I get an auto raise every time I pick up the dice up. Instead, now I'm building, well, I take this edge and it grants me this ability, or it grants me this specific bonus in a particular situation. So it feels almost more like building a combat character. I can pick specific things for situations rather than picking just, well, what gives me the biggest charisma modifier?
Yeah, exactly. And there's other things that it, that lets us do and play with. And, like I said, I think it lets us fine tune some stuff too, because there's cases where, persuasion is really the most commonly used social skill. I mean, it absolutely is. And like you said, old system, 3 edges, I'm at +6. It's like, and it's not that hard, and that's +6 to 2 separate skills, as it was. It's like this way we're able to dial back and go, persuasion really has a lot of uses. It has a ton of uses. I mean, especially with like the new support rules, tests, being able to use any skill now, everything like that, and being able to use it, just as your basic interaction skill. So being able to take that and say, yeah, now that we've taken charisma out of the mix and we know we don't have to worry about how it's going to worry when you're affecting, just getting information on the streets or just convincing somebody to help you out. We can focus in on, it can do all these different things. Well, let's dial that down to where these edges are going to give a benefit commensurate to how widely useful that skill is, as opposed to this, point value that's just kind of, standard for a lot of other edges. Let's focus it into what it's specifically going to do and how beneficial it'll be. Yeah.
I'll let one of you read Mabel's question since we're on the topic. That's a level of nepotism I'm not touching.
All right, listen. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of it. I'll handle it. So there's this classic story of a player character in a pirate game, basically a female character flashing the male player characters during a combat as a distractionary tactic. Still in there, right? I mean, still be able to do tricks is still part of the main system.
Well, tests.
Yeah, now we've renamed them, right?
Tests, right. Because in that particular case, that's actually a great example of one that this isn't really a trick. This is a test, guys.
Can you stay focused?
Can you stay focused? And, the thing I like about our new rules is there are a lot of different ways to approach that description based off how you're using the rules. Now you could say, I'm going to use persuasion. Absolutely, that makes sense. You could use taunt. Look what you're never getting. And I'll put it out there, depending on the character and the description, I think intimidation could work as well. And, there's, like I said, there's a lot of different ways to do that. And you're just looking at, hey, I want to affect a bunch of different people with a particular skill or something like that. There'll be some options in there, for how to, I will say there's an edge in there that shows how to use a specific test against a group of people. And as I mentioned in another discussion I had, there's nothing that prevents the GM or the player working together and saying, can I take that skill and swap it for this skill and give this a different name? And now it does, now it's going to work with that skill for me. And, you have to think about it. Is it going to be persuasion? There's a lot of uses for persuasion. Do I want to allow that? But possibly. I mean, the other thing to keep in mind, and we now have it baked in more into tests, the way they're described is, it's definitely not going to work repeatedly in the same combat over and over and over again.
Right.
At a certain point, you're just topless fighting on a pirate ship, and the combat's going on. But yeah, I mean, there's there will be ways to work at that, and I think part of that is I also think you'll see in the Game Master's book that we're doing will also describe the ways the GM can use the rules and adapt those, and adjust. This says this, but I mean, as I said before, you could pretty much take every combat edge we have in the book and replace fighting or shooting with a social skill and make them into social edges. I mean, you could frenzy socially and make multiple attacks, basically multiple, social, tests or something like that on people, more effectively, or, sweep. Maybe you have to be up close to get a good look at them. I don't know. They all have to be adjacent, but, you could, or just be one of those characters, a real low Batman-esque growl of just the people adjacent to you hear your intimidating presence. And no one else outside that adjacency is even aware it happened. But everybody that's right around you, your intimidating sweep, so to speak, has affected.
I really do like that, actually. That seemed to be something that was missing before, but now I can kind of get that whole, that works.
Yeah.
Well, the system's always been very build-a-block, right? I mean, it's always had that open-ended adaptability to anything. But I think a lot of times what's missed with the gamer community is if it isn't written out, then you can't do it. You can't do that. It's not in the rules. And if the general sense of the rule system is pick it up, retrap it, use it the way you want to, then it's implied. I mean, and I think it's a good thing whenever you can codify something like that in writing, so that people who are used to needing that quote unquote permission to do it can do it.
Yeah, let's take it out of being implied and put it in some writing. And then I also think the Game Master book is a good way to do it, because it's really going to be a book of aid and suggestions and things like that. But it also means that the players aren't looking at the book and getting confused. They're not seeing a bunch of different options. The Game Master has those options in their hand, and once the players are comfortable, then he can hand those out, or she. He or she can hand those out. They can hand those out. Actually, I should say she, because we use female for our Game Master in all of our examples. So she can hand those out, however they want. And, it's like build up to that. And I think one of the main things is start out with a very simple, it's kind of a session zero-ish kind of thing, but for specific characters of, well, what do you want your character to be able to do? And are we talking about something they can do now or something you're building towards?
Right.
Let's work from there.
So,
all right, so
we got kind of buried up here further back. We do have a question. Ideas on player crafting beyond weird science. And I don't want to preload the answer, but I think I know an edge that does this.
Let's see.
Yeah, I think what he's asking is are there going to be any ideas for people out there who want to do crafting beyond that?
Well, I do know that in the horror companion they had the talisman crafter.
Yeah, but that's not in SWADE.
Yeah, we're talking
No.
SWADE, Dustin.
No.
I know.
Jesus,
But-
Dustin, read the fucking program.
But
Man.
I
of the
read
people
it.
Here,
I'm
of the
just
people here
saying
who've
that
read the book,
that-
I'm the only one that can say I can't
that was
tell
an
you.
edge that let people make it depending on the arcane background they had.
Yeah.
Well-
But there will be in something that's SWADE that opens up some more options outside of just weird science for having devices. You will see something in there, and I think you will really like it because it gets back to that. The answer is right in front of us, really. It's sitting there.
Not talking about the new one though, isn't to a certain extent, isn't that also covered kind of under MacGyver? Kind of that ability for a player to kind of make a quick rule and like all of a sudden they throw together a raft because the characters need to build a raft, or they cobble together the bulldozer into a tank, A-team style with that MacGyver edge. Really kind of let players kind of slot into doing that as a specialty that their character could do.
Yeah, and there's a little trick that's out there, and I think we did it in one of the settings where the flip side of MacGyver, the Gadgeteer edge, which actually allows you to, once per session, get a power that you have available, your rank or less, whatever, and you get like half your power points for it, and it's only going to last that session. It's set up for weird science, but it goes back to that thing of, I think I don't know which one, but I think in one of them we did a thing where we just said, yeah, that's now an edge for this other arcane background that actually doesn't have items normally. Shamans in Deadlands. They basically had a way to create talismans in there, and essentially it's Gadgeteer where they could get a one-shot power with half their power point. It's exactly the same edge. It just required having, their skill and their background to have it, but it gave them that same effect. So yeah, they also, that's actually, that's the arcane version of MacGyver of, yeah, I can get this power and I know I have it for this but then you've got MacGyver, which is the whole, I'm going to take this, tractor trailer and take some extra springs and turn it into a 4-wheel drive tractor trailer, with armor and, stuff and everything like that. But yeah, there's, even in the current rules, you could simply take, you could easily take Gadgeteer, switch out the arcane backgrounds, the skills and stuff like that, and boom, have a way for another arcane background to at least have a one-shot device they can create on the fly. If you want to say, hey, I'm a potion master, magician, can make potions. It's like, well, give yourself a little bit of time and, you could create some fireball potions or whatever, It's like, at least for this scenario, they're not going to last long, because you're not an alchemist. You're not living in a town and that's your job, But yeah, I think in the new version, you'll be happy with what's out there.
And I'm kind of interested in Art's question. I don't know, Clint, if you'll have an answer to it at this point, but he asks, will you be working with Hero Lab to update to the new rules, or are you guys going to build your own character generator?
We are not building our own, and Hero Lab is working on updating.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're in contact with the guy that's working on the Savage World stuff for Hero Lab, and we've always been really happy working with them. They're really, really great folks to work with, and I know. I will tell you off the bat. You guys want to know, Hero Lab, they are behind us. This guy contacted me and Shane and was like, as soon as we announced the Kickstarter, he was like, so when can I start on this? You're like, okay, give us a bit. You'll get it when we release it to the licensees, everyone else and stuff like that. But he was ready to go. So yeah, they're as excited as anyone to get that thing updated and ready to go.
It's good to know, because that's one thing I love to use that for convention characters.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering if that was going to be part of the tabletop stretch goal that will hit here in about $8,000. but no, it's cool to know that the licensees are kind of wanting to immediately jump in and do stuff like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we've got the jump starts and we've got the other things like that to kind of, show off what's out there for Savage Worlds. Because again, the 15 years isn't just what we've learned about the system. It's where the system's gone and how much stuff is out there. And, there's a lot of stuff out there for Savage Worlds. And it's even like a Kickstarter. Like I promise you, we will end this Kickstarter and we will get emails from people who missed it. As much, as it's out there and people know about it, and as much social media and everything up, people always miss Kickstarters. It happens. And, somebody will come back to that. And it's the same thing with licensees. I mean, there's so many options out there. And I love the jump starts that we've got because, you get a chance to see what's out there. And it may not be a setting we did, and, but it may be the setting for that group. It may be what they want to play, and that's awesome. And we've got the licensees to do that. Like I said, we've got the guys with Hero Lab. Separately, we've got all the guys, the foreign language guys that, do Savage Worlds in other languages that are out there, and those folks. And again, everybody is, it's great to have that much support and feel that many people that are behind you, supporting you and believing in you. And, we just want to make sure that, we do for them as well, because we all got here together. I didn't mean to stun you. Which, by the way, is a new condition. Stun.
This happens at least once per show, where everybody just goes silent for a moment.
One thing I wanted to bring up is like the Kickstarter is going well, and it looks like we've got a lot of mini settings coming out. Yeah. What is anything you want to touch on there? Like, what's going on with that?
We have a lot of mini settings coming out.
Yes. Any fun ones in particular? I know there's an undersea one.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it yet myself. More than anybody, because but Shane's, that's like Johnny Quest meets Sea Lab thing, and the whole thing of having a little bit of kind of Lost in Space, where you not only have to deal with what's down there, but you got to deal with your family, and intermingling family stuff. That's interesting. BJ Hensley's, that was one of the first ones I heard about, and I really want to see what she brings to the table, because by the way, for those that don't know, BJ is with Lone Wolf, who does Hero Lab, in addition to everything else she does in the industry games wise. So we've known and worked with her for a while, and it's thrilling to be able to work on game products and have something like that come out. And I will tell you, literally, as as people have said, they didn't want, I think somebody said earlier, they didn't want me to get a swelled head because we were going to call it Savage Worlds Black. Trust me, if it was named after anyone, it was named after Jody Black, not Clint Black. Okay. The person that actually makes things happen at Pinnacle. But she came immediately after, hammering out the details, and she was just a mile a minute telling me her ideas for the setting that, BJ was going to be doing. So I'm thrilled about that one. Spirits of 86. For those that don't know the background, that's how Matt Cutter became the Deadlands brand manager. He actually ran that game at a con on the Cobb years ago, and that was where we first met Matt. And he kind of brought in that setting and started looking at it and just realized he clicked so well with us. And like so many other, people, start out as a fan, and it's like, and then, Shane pulls you in and just never lets go. Never sit down. But yeah, that was, I'm going to put him on the spot here. Matt, at that convention, wore full 18th century regalia.
Oh, nice.
Tricorn hat, the knee breeches, the white stockings pulled up, everything. He ran that game in full regalia. And I fully expect him to do that in every game from now on.
Set the bar.
He's contractually obligated at this point.
Yeah.
So I know this is a little bit outside the Kickstarter, but I know it's kind of a burning question hanging out there in the ether. Updates to companions. Are there plans to release new editions of the companion rules to go along with the new adventure edition?
Yep.
Cool.
The fantasy companion and horror companion are first on the list because those have been out of print for a little while, and they're the only companions that hadn't come out in the new graphic novel format anyway. Plus, being the oldest of them, I would say particularly the fantasy companion is ripe for a major overhaul. And then the horror companion also not probably to the same level as that. And then, when, we'll have to do reprints on science fiction superpowers, so we'll update those as well. But obviously being more recent and more in tune with what we kind of ended up going with SWADE, those will be easier to adapt, probably with, fewer changes, minor, if any, just, adding handling to some vehicles and making sure that the weapon stats and stuff follow the formats that we're using now for clarity and things like that. And all the races are updated and those kind of things.
I know Jeremy Puckett, who we had on last week, was mentioning he's got an upcoming kind of horror supers setting that is kind of sitting in limbo right now as he's kind of waiting for the next version of the supers errata to come out from you guys so that he can push forward with that. But Savage Ram in chat's asking where martial arts companion falls in that, and I think that's something that did Shane reveal that in your interview, Chris?
I'm trying to remember where, because I was looking at that question. I'm trying to remember where he talked about it, but I know that he did reveal it. It might have been our show. It
was your show. Because I recall I stumbled and had to call 911.
Well, let's just say there was quite a bit of redacted stuff out of that particular episode that we ended up taking out.
This one didn't make it to the cutting list, though.
Right.
Clint would have appreciated if it had.
Yeah. The martial arts companion was a reveal that he let out there. It's something we've discussed for a while. It is definitely one of it's been one of Shane's babies, for a while, of what he wants to do, and he knows what he wants to do. But the martial arts companion, I'm not sure where it's going to fall in, because while we've got some baselines of where we were going to go with it, there's not a lot concrete because SWADE had to be done before we move forward with anything specific on it. And with that, it's not just a case of, even with the fantasy companion, with if we do a bunch of changes and everything, there's at least kind of a baseline there of a lot of ideas and thought processes have already gone through our heads. There was a design that went through there, and there are going to be cases where, we might change something or do something, but it may, or add something, but it could be something that was like, we were going to do this before, but, we should have, but we didn't. So this is already done. So it's just going to be a, freaking Shane. It's, when we know more, you'll know more. Like with anything, we try not to announce it till we get close to it, and those kind of things of not announce it till we get close to it, because he already did that. But it's definitely closer than it has been. Every second we pass. But no, we don't really have where it's going to fall in. I will say that fantasy and horror will probably be the first ones that we get done and get out. And then it's going to be a question of martial arts I kind of think it's weird. Really, like I said, sci-fi and superpowers are just primarily reprints. There's not a lot of changes to them. So they might be quote unquote updated, like while we're even, and they might be out and on shelves before the martial arts companion, but that's, again, it's just because there's not much to them, that they need to have done to them, as opposed to, martial arts companion, which is really, we got a big pile of bricks over here and we got to make a house out of it,
One of the older companions that I really like that isn't in use a lot anymore is the Pulp Toolkit.
Yep.
Specifically, I really like the bestiary in there. There's so many stats that can be used for just like regular people. And then you go back to the dinosaurs. I don't know if anybody's ever picking that up or if you guys would ever make that again, but the Pulp Toolkit was pretty good. Yeah.
The tricky part with the Pulp Toolkit is there's so much pulp that you can do. Just pick up the core book. That's true. I mean, really is, especially with the setting rules and stuff like that let us, that since we did with Deluxe of, hey, here's some stuff already to, bake this in. But, heroes never die. Go, you're set. But yeah, there is an interesting point about the bestiary there. I know there's some good stuff in there, but that is a really old product. As I believe the strengths are, that's from an era where, like, weapons added bonuses to strength.
It was,
and they got a wild die, for melee.
Wasn't it before Explorers Edition?
It was.
Oh yes. Way
before that. I mean, that was Wiggy. Yeah. Wiggy put a bunch of those out.
Yeah,
a bunch of those toolkits out way back in the day.
Yeah, they were Pinnacle stuff, but so it was the team. But yeah, he was primary on most of those. Yeah.
So do we want to do some rapid fire questions? Because we had a bunch come in.
Yeah.
Is that all right, Jared?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I put out last call for questions.
Art wants to know what can you tell us about the Adventurers Guild?
It'll be awesome. So I don't do the publishing, like side and stuff like that, but I do know a bit about Adventurers Guild. One thing is, okay, I'm going to say similar to DM's Guild, similar to other things that are out there like that through drive-through. There will be a one-stop shop for Savage World stuff. If you want to make something, you go through, you click through the license, you agree to it. There are some differences. The percentage that drive-through takes is the same no matter what. That's not changing. The percentage that Pinnacle takes, I can tell you, is, without getting too specific, it's about a third of what other people do on those. I can also say that our license, the license we use, we specifically put it in there that the material that you write and you release is your material. You have ownership for it. Some of the others, if you write anything and release it, anyone else can use it, and they don't even have to credit you. So it is your material, whatever you put out there. And it's going to basically be a way for people to get out and, put stuff out if they want to make money on it, without having to go through the licensing approval process. In essence, drive-through is going to be the approval in that, not necessarily like approval, but you have to have an account there. You have to set things up. You have to have gone through. You've had to agree to all these things. And then, just to be blunt, if your stuff gets out there and it's no good, the reviews are going to come in. It's the review system is built in. It's not something sitting on a shelf, where you don't know, necessarily how good it is if it's wrapped up or whatever. But we're really excited out because we think, there was basically an on-off situation. The fan license will still be out there. Anybody that wants to make stuff, free and for fans, that's still out there if you want to do that. But this is a secondary option between going full light publisher route, full scale trade dress, everything like that, and doing this. And the other Adventurers Guild advantages, those guys are going to have access to some art, layout, things like that Pinnacle's going to make available for them to use. Okay, that wasn't a quick answer for a
Deadlands Dark Ages. Win.
Yeah,
I answered that question.
it's a great setting. When? Oh, when?
Yeah.
In the future. The Dark Ages will come in the future.
Isn't it the answer when it's ready?
When it's ready. Possibly.
The trademarked answer of when it's ready.
Actually, even when it's ready isn't accurate. It'll be more like 3 weeks after it's ready, because that's how Kickstarter works. It's like after the Kickstarter ends, it's like a 3-week period before we can actually put anything out there, even though it's ready.
So there's two questions here that I think kind of dovetail into each other. How far out are stretch goals planned that have not been revealed, and what happens when SWADE reaches 500K?
So how far out are stretch goals planned? I'll be straight up. That's a hard question for me to answer, because that's Jody and Shane. Shane and I are dealing with the rules stuff. I can tell you about, the hours we spent today finalizing chase rule stuff and things, but, Jody's the one that's been working with him on, prepping up stretch goals. So I know that they've got the stuff planned out and where they're going, and there's more stuff out there. So, but I can't say much about it. Sorry. I just don't run the Kickstarter, and I don't want to.
I guess if you want to know, you got to get all those people who haven't backed it yet to get out there and back it, and we'll have to wait and see. Yeah,
that's really huge. I mean, I've said it before. There are so many people who said, I didn't hear anything. I don't know. And, sometimes, there are people that go on social media moratoriums or just don't check stuff, or just happen not to look at the right time. And that happens. So sometimes if you're at the game store and your friends there, just mention it. We had that come up, I think, this past weekend, where somebody actually told us, mentioned to the friend, knew nothing about the Kickstarter, knew nothing about there being a new edition, even in the works. So.
CL Taylor had thrown a note in here about trappings. His question had actually gone past us earlier. He says that we talk about trappings a lot, and he thought he had read somewhere in the preview stuff that Shane had released on Facebook that this was going to define the idea of trappings better for both new players as well as the GMs who just weren't quite understanding what it is. Can you talk a little bit about the way trappings are changing for this edition?
So what we're doing is we're going with a concept that kind of comes from the Superpower Companion of modifiers to powers, where the players are going to have options to modify the powers. Some will be specific to the power, and some will be more universal. And they can do that kind of on the fly, how they want to. And so what that means is you don't have to choose a specific trapping to get a particular effect if you want it. What you can do is really make your trappings more of the appearance of it, the flavor for the character. But then if you want to say, this bolt has armor piercing, then you can add armor piercing to it. You don't have to choose a specific trapping that says that. You're just going to pay an extra power point to add armor piercing to that bolt. Or if you don't want it to have that, or you want it to have something else, you can add that particular modifier. So, the trapping is going to affect, essentially it's going to get into immunities, invulnerabilities, resistances, weaknesses, things like that. That's where trappings, the definition, you want to hit a troll with fire. Yeah, absolutely. Fire is a weakness, so fire is a good choice. But your fire attack, the player will have the option to adjust it, as opposed to I had to choose a particular effect to adjust it, a particular quote unquote trapping. Now it's choose what it looks like and then make that your own. This firebolt is, a narrow, stream of fire that's going to pierce right through, the plate mail, as opposed to a larger, small ball of fire that you throw. You'll have that ability in there.
Eric Atkinson asks, is there going to be a push from PEG to increase your presence at conventions, mostly because he wants to get his book signed?
Yeah, I guess in a way. So we already hit a lot of conventions. Jody and myself do. The trickier part is getting the one that Shane goes to. But yeah, I mean, we are hitting more conventions, and as it stands for Jody and myself, basically come after about the beginning of next summer, our schedule is going to get freed up and allow us to probably hit some more, especially ones that we've missed. There's some convention out in like the Denver area that we really liked. I don't know. There was some guy that knew the name of that one. Forget what it was, but yeah, it was that one.
I was going to say, yeah, come to Genghis or Tacticon.
Yeah,
if you want to get a book signed.
Yeah, Tacticon's a little bit trickier for us.
Yeah, Genghis is the better one to come to if you want to see some get your book signed by from Savage Worlds folks.
But yeah, we're trying to get out there more. I'd love to get back to Genghis, of course. ChupacabraCon is just fantastic. Those guys were awesome. That gets us down into Texas. And, we're looking around at other options. Obviously, we do Gen Con. We do Origins. Jody and I do Dragon Con in Atlanta. This coming weekend, actually, we'll be in Charlotte for Mace, which is an all gaming convention. Literally come in on Friday, you will game till Sunday, and that is it. And it's fantastic. It's a great run, great organization, great group of guys. And then the end of this month, the very end, going into the first couple of days of December, we will be at PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia, which is this is only their second year, but it is a really great convention. We also do we've done PAX South and PAX East, and the guys that do those conventions, they're just some of the best run conventions I've been to. I mean, they're volunteers, they're guys, they're all just super helpful and super nice. But if you go to we're going to pre-plug here a little bit, but if you go to CarolinaGameTables.com, which is Jody and I's other job, we have a convention schedule page that puts out there, and we'll show you the conventions we're going to go to. It's a little bit easier than waiting for it to pop up on the Pinnacle Tuesday update. All right, what else do we have?
Yeah, but say anything else?
What if SWADE hits $500,000, dollars? I'm going to ask Shane for a raise. I would like to move from intern to secretary, if possible.
It's not that great, really. It's not that great.
Okay. No.
Oh, you have new duties, and you're not actually getting paid any better.
That's right.
There was one question, and I know you guys sort of do this, where you have folks who run official games for you, right? Like, if you go to MaceCon, you'll see people running around in the bowling shirts, essentially, who are official representatives for the company and run those official games or whatever. So the question was, are you guys ever going to do anything sort of like Mathfinder has their Mathfinder Society, D&D Adventure League? Sorry, I can't stand D20 games. I'm down for that.
That's fine. Just be aware, some of my really good friends write for that company. Okay,
yeah, it's all good.
And I personally am impressed with their capability, because as much as I do Savage Worlds, I couldn't do some of the stuff they do, design wise, mechanically. But
so much crunch.
Actually, we don't have the official thing anymore. Mike and Steve used to do that for us. They used to run that. They basically retired out of that, but they're still active with us, which, not a problem whatsoever. I mean, Mike basically said, I want to spend more time with my kids. And we were like, we want you to spend more time with your kids. I mean, not that we don't want you here, but, yes, that's a good thing to do. So I mean, if you're seeing somebody in shirts like this shirt, person probably works for Pinnacle. That's me, at some of these. We did do the red shirts. I think we did for Savage Worlds. We made those available for sale as a pre-order, I think 1 year before Gen Con. So there's some people that have those, and actually the pre-order was some people were able to get their name stitched on them. So there's some people that have those that are just fans that bought them. So if you go out to like Genghis Con and the Rocky Mountain Savages are running games, you'll probably see a couple of guys wearing those shirts because they got them. But really, it's the fan groups who pull those things together and run those games, and they make Savage Saturday Night happens at those conventions. I mean, they're the ones that make that happen. And we've talked about doing an organized play, but it's just we keep coming back to our initial thing is when you go to a Savage Saturday Night, for example, the best thing about it is you can look at one table and you see Carl Kiesler running, Trailer Park Shark Attack. You look at another, game over here and it's a Dead End. You look at another and there's Weird Wars Rome. There's some of our games. There's other games. But it's the creativity of the people that have come up with their own stuff that's cool. How do you organize that? How do you make that happen? That you really want to show off. Do whatever you want with this game. Do what you want with it. That's the cool part we want to show off, as opposed to say, hey, let's just take Deadlands and create an organized play that's going to continue along, and we're going to tell this one story in here, and you're just going to see Deadlands really, as opposed to, dude, you're missing out on ETU. Some really awesome setting. I think they call Necessary Evil that everyone should play. Necessary Evil 2 as well. Breakout. Excuse me. So that's kind of the tricky part. I mean, we've had people approach us about it, but it is a thing of it's tricky to organize that stuff when what we want to show off is, the shotgun effect. Yeah. How do you laser focus something, which is what you need for that, when the fun part is just the 3d6 damage at short range.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
I think a lot of it comes down to people wanting free swag, right? Or that checking the box of like, I run games for Savage Worlds,
And that is the thing that we do. If you guys are running at a store, you're running at a convention, send an email to Pinnacle because we will send you support. At a store, at a convention. Guys, if you don't know that, it's, look it up. Absolutely. Because we can send some, coupons downloadable for the store, if nothing else, if it's short, if it's short notice or something. But I mean, if we can do anything, absolutely. I mean, we want to support that stuff. So you contact in, and I think either Christine or Jody is working with that, and if it's not, Christine, she can connect you with Jody and get that stuff set up. But absolutely, I mean, we do that. We want to make sure there's support out there for the guys running at the conventions and things. And all you have to do is contact us and let us know. All right, what else we got?
Manuel Sam's just asked in regards to what you were just saying, where an individual can reach out and contact you guys to do those things. Is that available for overseas markets, or do they have to talk to whoever holds the individual license in their area, or can they just reach out directly to PAC?
Go ahead and contact Jody because she's going to know. But I think if it is somebody else, she's going to know who to contact there. If it's not, then you're going in and email address is pegjody@gmail.com. Jodi. I have to remember, I know how to spell her name. I've learned it. Over 21 years and 364 days. Meaning, yes, tomorrow is our anniversary.
Oh,
and I'm spending it with you guys.
Congratulations.
My anniversary eve.
I felt bad because we had tried to schedule you in last week and you had the family thing. I would never have asked you to come in this week knowing it was your anniversary.
It's anniversary eve. It's a different thing. Last week, and I'm sorry to the guys that showed up and were, shocked at seeing Jeremy instead of me, and had to deal with the horror of that, as I understand. But there was a scheduling thing that happened, and just say my daughter was recognized at a thing that was supposed to be Friday because of weather. They made it, Thursday, and it's like, it's my kid, guys. I'm going to be there.
Family first.
And I appreciate you guys doing the rescheduling for me as well.
Well, I mean, anyone who watches the show knows that pretty much everyone but Jared can take a night off from this. So, yeah, we completely understand. We would never ask you to put this in front of your kid. I guess, at least for myself, I would just say congratulations on the amazing Kickstarter.
Thank you.
We all expected it to go great, but just watching it continue to climb, and then knowing that you guys have now hit that doldrums, and I don't even know what percentage over you are at this point, but now you're going to come back into that power swing at the end. I can only imagine what it's going to end up at.
I hope so. We, like I said, we've done a few of these, and Jody and Shane kind of know how they're working with it. So they're really trying to use this central part where it is kind of thing to do that thing of expand it out, get that information out there, especially to those people that may miss it, because this is that time when it's the best chance to reach them. But, a lot of people are focused at the beginning, and a lot of people get focused at the end. And this is a good point. And so hopefully we have an opportunity to do that. And I mean, we've got all sorts of stuff out there between, you guys and our discussion here tonight. And as we talked earlier, I think Jody and Shane were doing another one like 2 hours before us. And as I think I talked about earlier, you should be able to get out on YouTube or even listen to it as a podcast. The guys at the Saving Throw Show and their ETU Undeclared. And if you haven't seen it, we watched it live. And I am not kidding you that I literally got chills 3 times watching people play a horror game. Jordan did a great job, and I'm not going to ruin it for you, but you get in there. And for those who don't know, the particular adventure he's running is actually the very first licensee product that ever existed for Savage Worlds.
Oh.
Does anyone know the name of that?
Oh, I don't remember.
Is it Evernight or is it 50 Fathoms?
No, licensee product. Those were Pinnacle
licensee.
This was 12 to midnight.
Yes.
12 to midnight. I've had that.
Jared's partway there. Yeah.
I was going to say I've had the conversation with Ed, but I don't remember the name of the adventure.
12.
Dustin's fighting for it.
No, I have the 12 to midnight stuff, and like everybody wants to say Chickens in the Mist, but it's not Chickens.
No,
in the Mist.
it's the first adventure with the.
Was it the Black Guard?
Yeah, I think the
Last Rites of the Black Guard.
Yeah, it's a good adventure.
Woo-woo!
Yeah. Last Rites of the Black Guard, which for those who don't know, they put that out for D20 back when they made D20 stuff. Shane bought that and contacted them, and he did the conversion because he loved that adventure so much. And that was kind of the start of our relationship with the guys at 12 to Midnight and our friendship with them, and ultimately led to ETU, which in the plot point campaign for that has some callbacks to some of that stuff if you did, play it. But yeah, I mean that, and I remember reading it as well, and they really had a talent for doing a ghost story that was a ghost story and understanding some of the aspects of running a horror game, which is, I think, one of the key aspects of running a horror game, which, we missed it last time, is put in NPCs that the players care about and are scared for. Yeah. If you look at especially the first couple of seasons of Supernatural, the guys aren't scared of anything, but there's always somebody in that episode to put that fear, the horror element in there. They have to worry about them, their safety or their reaction to the monsters and things like that. And you know, and of course it's just, you know, it's a great story. It's a great little thing, but yeah, that's what they're doing. And, you know, it's his own twist on it, putting it in the 80s, which I think is fun as well. Literally putting it in the first year that ETU became East Texas University, when it had become a state university. So Jordan also knows his history of ETU. All right, so but yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff out there to point to say, hey, you want an idea of what this game is like? Here's a way to look at it. And so I recall there was something about, you know, doing a chase somebody was going to do. I think we talked about.
I think we're doing that as a special episode a little bit later, right around the time the close of the Kickstarter is happening.
Okay.
Dustin's organizing that one. That wasn't. We didn't want to take up your time running a chase.
I know. Not now. I know not now, but you know, we're going to put it out there, and just give us a little bit to get you the final version of that too.
Well, I was going to say, aren't the guys on the Wild Die also doing one?
Chris?
No, that's the Wild Die is
Wild Die is Eric Lamoureux and
yeah. Yeah, you're savage.
Savage Cast.
His name Gary.
Yeah. Possibly. I know. Again, I think that was something Jody was talking to them about, and I think I pointed that direction to check with her to see. But I mean, to me, that's actually a great thing, because what I want to see are two people have the same scenario, how to both run it. Yeah. You know, because that gets into that thing of seeing it. It's like, you know, you're going to see some similarities, sure, but it's the differences that interest me. You know, it's how two people run it differently, because you're seeing a case where, again, there's no wrong way. You know, everybody's having fun, you know, so it opens it up to two different people. Somebody might watch one version and go, that's not for me, and then watch the other version and go, that looks like a blast. You know? So, you know, understand, you know, it's when you pick up the book and you play it, or pick up one of the, you know, the freebies or something like that, it's what you make of it, you know, and put into it. So, and that's why I like to show different, you know, different people doing different things. Always good. All right. Anything else we had?
I don't think so. I think we exhausted the chat, and unless I missed something, Dave, you look like you're seeing something else? No,
I haven't seen anything else that was.
Yeah, I've not seen anything else.
A lot of people congratulating Clint on his anniversary.
Oh, thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Yes, wow, there are a lot of people doing that. Thank you so much. It has been, you know, the best thing in my life, obviously, you know, and and it is humbling to know that, you know, we've gotten to the point that if Shane had to choose one of the blacks to cut free, you know, it wouldn't even take a minute. You know, take a second. It's like, hey, I'll buy you lunch before you leave, Clint. Come on, let's go.
He can continue to write rules. He needs someone to do everything that Jody does.
Right. Plus, he also realizes that Jody would make me do it anyway.
She's effectively the queen of our organization.
Well, all right. So, thank you all.
My pleasure. So, on that note, we'll go ahead and shut down the show, bring the show to a close. So, until next time, this is Jared Savage, Daddy Gunning, for Scott, Dustin, Dave, Chris, and our special guest host, Clint Black, saying keep rolling and stay savage.